First, thanks, Inga. I was not planning to present any of the mathematics, so it's good that you did. Let's see here.
Could you do, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah, wow. This chapter has a lot in it. And I think any of us can only scratch the surface of the implications of it. I like to look at big questions, so the overarching questions. For example, what is the meaning of meaning? And so I'll present just a few thoughts on that. And you know, what is this all about, and why? What is the motivation? I'm going to posit the motivation. It's not completely clear to me. This is a different world from what I'm used to, and I'm trying to find ways to connect the ideas to things that I might be interested in. But I can see the value of coming up with this measure of redundancy, a measure of at least a surrogate measure of meaning. If you have a very large data set from interactions, you're analyzing it, these kind of measures can be quite useful. So what is the meaning of meaning? In this relates to other words in English in particular that have been problematic in discussions and conversations I've had for many, many years. And I think others also. There's a particular world in which some of the words have very specific meanings, and people that are in that world can use those words and understand what each other is talking about. But the word meaning, to me, and even semantics, is sometimes a problem. And here are some of the other ideas or words that sometimes get interchanged with the word meaning. For example, there's the expression, the meaning of life. And it gets interchanged with what is the purpose of life. And certainly a sender or a participant's purpose or intent when they talk is a part of, it goes into the meaning that they're trying to convey. Sense making. Carl Weick used that term in organizations. I like, when I think of the word meaning, think of significance. And I'll often, if I'm getting confused with the word meaning, I'll interchange it with the word significance. And I'll try to show a little why I find that useful. There is this hierarchy of significance, if you will, in which various words are used in a relational way, each going above the other. So when I talk of data, I talk about, what's everything, and anything can be data. And if I talk about, for example, a doctor and a patient, a medical doctor and a patient, they have huge amounts of initial data available to them. No significance at all until the doctor decides to take some measurements, to ask some questions, to focus in on something of interest, something that might provide some clues. And so we call that perhaps information. These words, this sequence, by the way, is from Russell Ackoff primarily, but I've seen it elsewhere. I find it useful. So information is some significance. I think this corresponds with the Shannon information, but we'll see. Then the doctor applies their knowledge, their expertise, what they know, to really give some significance to the information that they have, to the point where maybe they can make a prescription, they can make a recommendation to the patient. And this is where the idea of meaning, to me, starts to take hold. But then we have understanding. Understanding, even more significance, because now the doctor begins to see patterns, sees patterns in one patient that he can apply to another patient, sees patterns that maybe in one kind of disease that he can apply to another kind of disease. That gets at really, understanding what's going on beyond just having the expertise and the knowledge. And then, of course, finally, there's wisdom. So this is sort of a progressive idea of meaning from data to wisdom. Wisdom is where you can teach it. Wisdom is where you can make judgments. It's where ethics becomes of highest importance. Now this maps, I think, into Loet's layers of communication, I call them. And we start at the bottom with information. That's Shannon information. You have the diagram that Inga just showed with a sender and a receiver, the encoding and decoding and channel communication. It's important to remember that Shannon called his book, Shannon and Weaver called their book, and Shannon called his theory, the theory of the mathematical theory of communication. It's not the mathematical theory of information, it's the mathematical theory of communication. And so this is a form at that basic level. Then, as Loet points out, the Weaver in particular said, now we need more. It's one thing to have a transmission of information, a reduction of some uncertainty, but it's another to put that information into some context, to give it some significance. There's the intent, there's the patterns of relations. So you have relations at the informational level, patterns of relations, or what Loet calls correlations at the semantic layer of communication. Then above that, you have patterns of communication itself, paradigms, communication of communication. And so it's at this level that, well, at that layer. And this is, when we present these things, they are always presented in this hierarchical kind of way. But I think it's, and Loet points this out, it's very important to recognize that these loop back and forth. They affect each other. They form a whole system together. Then redundancy, right? I found this reminded me of this quote from Gertrude Stein. There is no such thing as repetition, only insistence. So the more insistence, the more significance. And this happens over time. It's important. This happening over time, repetition is over time. More insistence, the more significance, and the more significance, then the more meaning. Hence redundancy as a measure of the meaning. In information theory, all redundancy is something to be avoided because it takes up channel capacity and is inefficient. But when you start to think about it, when there's redundancy in a message or in a communication and an interchange, that's significant. That's a dynamic. That's part of the dynamics of what's going on in that interchange between the people, and therefore becomes of high importance. That's I think the question for us maybe to discuss is whether it's sufficient as a measure of meaning. Okay, that's really the end of what I wanted to present. Again, there's so much there to talk about. I love the diagrams. Inga, presented those diagrams. There's a lot to dig into there. But again, I just want to get at some of maybe the bigger questions about this all that apply not just to this chapter, but to the entire book. Thanks.